Welcome to Connecting the Dots, a non-traditional legal program with your host and trusted advisor, Liz Myska, your guide through the web of life's dilemmas.
Welcome to another edition of Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Liz Myska, and I am pleased as punch to welcome Edith Morgan from Senior Speak, another program here on WCCA TV. This was our first opportunity to have a joint program, not joint in terms of joints, meaning body parts, but for the two of us to do a show together. We've been talking about this for a very long time because I should silence myself and welcome you, Edith, so that you can get a word in edgewise. So.
Oh, don't worry, I always get a word in edgewise. Thank you for having me.
Well, our former producer, Billy Hamilton, produced your show, Senior Speak, and my show, Connecting the Dots. And prior to his departure from WCCA TV, we were trying to get him to permit us to have a program together. So this is I've been on your show and now you're on my show, but we're doing this together with issues that are relevant to your audience and to my audience. So thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
So we did a little prelim and we talked about accessibility, not of the city of Worcester, not from the standpoint of buildings or roadways, but in terms of turning things on its head and looking at the person rather than the structure, rather than the environment. And I know you have definite opinions on that. So I don't know if that's enough of a starter for you.
Yes, you want to turn me loose?
I'm turning you loose.
Actually, we have a lot of interest in common that way because while you are, more specifically interested in various kinds of disabilities, my interest has always been in, children who need extra help. And I've always been interested in both ends of the continuing because the very gifted also have needs that we don't meet, except in the athletic field. And we also have kids at the bottom and the lower end who don't fit into that nondescript middle that most people can fit into one way or another. So you and I had been talking about this for some time. And I had talked with Maureen Menendez at one time because I have my rant and rave about stop talking about the kids being ready for school. The school should be ready for the kid no matter where he is. High school teachers seem to think that all kids come in equal at the bottom,
Ready-made.
Equal.
Right.
But that's not true. I've had a kid, for example, one of my characteristic kindergarten classes, I won't say where, was, say, 10 or 12 kids. On this end was a kid with a vocabulary maybe of 500 words who really couldn't be trusted even to put together a whole good grammatical sentence. And over here, it's a kid that I could, put in the corner and say, you read this book when you run across a word that you don't know, come and ask me. Figure it out. So you have that, all 5-year-olds in the same class.
Right.
So trying to teach to whatever, there was a real middle,
Right.
Every child was different. So the idea that you had to have 30 or 40 kids in a classroom to save money means that we were just creating a whole lot of kids on both ends who are not being served.
Right.
And predictably, if you let those things fester,
It's going to
as you get older, it's going to get more difficult to remedy, more expensive to remedy, and it's going to be less, less working less well.
Right.
So I think the same is true when you're talking about disabilities. Now, we had our special ed director at Quabbin one time. He and I used to have occasional talks about, because I had chapter 1, which was remedial reading for kids who were behind reading, and he was special ed, all the other disabilities. And we thought we could save ourselves a lot of trouble if every single kid, no matter what we thought they could do or couldn't do, had an IEP at the beginning when they came in.
Right.
So then the school would know, okay, this is where this kid is. This kid here needs to expand his vocabulary. This kid here needs to, is already reading and needs to be turned loose. This kid can handle phonics. This one can't, obviously. So we thought if every kid had, the IEP is the individualized educational plan. Now, if you have a child as a parent, we don't know what all you have done with your child. They may have wonderful achievement areas in some areas and be totally lacking in others, because kids don't develop evenly.
Right.
And we already know that girls develop differently from boys. They're not the same at 5 years. A 5-year-old boy is good with large muscle activity. But
not necessarily.
maybe he can't draw within the lines, and maybe that's not so important. Girls are readier to sit down. And for some reason, in the early days, I don't know how it is now since we've changed so much, but in the early days at least, girls were more accepting of ambiguity than boys. So if you teach them phonetic rules, English is not highly phonetic, especially not the 220 most commonly used words, adults list. They're not phonetic. Think about G-O-N-E, D-O-N-E, and O-N-E. Gone, done, and won. They're all spelled the same way, so the same rule should apply, and it doesn't. Many boys will say, give me math. A 2 is always a 2. In reading, you can't trust what they say. The rules don't apply. To heck with it. And so we create disabled readers because they don't put up with that kind of, it's either works or it doesn't work. Girls will say, well, I'll take the teacher's word for it. We'll see later on. It's an ambiguous world. Everything doesn't go according to the rules. And the left brain and the right brain, have different views about things, whereas in the boys, it's all one brain, and there's no connection, So they're vastly different, and when you don't pay attention to the differences, then they become disabilities in education.
I don't want to disrupt the train, but your train of thought. I am not a numbers person. I had a dad who was an accountant who loved numbers, and I'm a word person. I love the words, but I think the interesting thing, and the point when you were talking, my parents sent me to Bancroft School for kindergarten because my dad worked at Riley Stoker, which is over by where the Greendale Mall used to be, the Constant Street. Anyway, my dad would drop me off, but then my mother became pregnant with my sister. So public school. I then went to public school. But the point that I want to make at Bancroft, those were the kids of the elite. Those were people were paying, and I had in my class, and I will not mention names, but there were 2 twins who were their parent was very prominent in the city, and I hate to say they were dumb as rocks. I mean, they didn't know there was going to be no hope.
It can happen.
At the time, Bancroft had the nursery school and the kindergarten were in a small building next to each other, and between the 2 classrooms there was a wall with the fire pull box. Yeah. Well, one of the twins, and he, and he pulled like, what's this? And then we all, both the nursery school and the kindergarten, we got to go to the Grove Street fire station and learn about fire safety and get up on the fire trucks. I will never forget this as long as I live. It was, but all of that because, again, kids at different levels, kids of different abilities. again, these were boys saying, well, I'm just going to touch this thing and see what happens, even if the teacher had said, no, you don't, that's not for you. So, but, sorry, that just sprung to my mind. And then, I went to public school, and I felt that I had a very good education in public school. But what I liked, I guess, when I was rubbing elbows with the elite, they had already been conditioned by their circumstances to look at society a different way. When I went to public school, and I grew up in Holden, so again, I'm not. We're not in. I wasn't in an inner city, but it was a different. It was more middle class. It was more rough and tumble, and so anyway, when I reflect back, I think of those things, like how different it would have been had I continued on in Bancroft. How different it would have been. So. Yes. But it resonated with me when you said that girls, deal with the ambiguities, because I feel as a lawyer too, I see that I have clients that, all right, this is particularly engineers. This is the way it's supposed to be. This is the way it is. There's no deviation. And being a lawyer, we have many, we can argue both sides. We have to know both sides.
You have to be able to defend both sides.
Exactly. So anyway, but I also wanted to comment. A couple years ago, I had an intern, a young man who was visually impaired, who is very interested in becoming an attorney, and he has albinism, which. So he is an albino, and his parentage. His parents are from India, the country. So he does not look anything like his parents or his siblings. But I believe he was born in the United States. He might have been born in India. Anyways, his parents were told that he would never read or write, and so his mother.
Probably didn't accept that.
She didn't accept it. She started taking him to the library. And this was actually in Shrewsbury. She said she took him to the library in Shrewsbury, and he became, so she was doing his education for him. And I mean, this young man now is at Trinity College in Hartford. He has formed a nonprofit. He is a sponge for learning and knowledge. So when you were talking before, again, are people consigned? Are people consigned, assigned that and tracked?
Yes, they are.
So
for convenience, really.
Right.
It's not for them.
Economics.
It's for convenience.
Is it economics?
Of course it is. Yeah. Everything is economics, but tracking is for convenience, and because it's easier. You label a certain group a certain way, and then you have the materials for that group and so forth, and you don't have a whole lot of homework to do, to individualize instruction.
I'm also thinking that I remember I was a voracious reader. My parents were voracious readers. When I was in first and second grade, and again, this is in public school, there were different groups, reading groups, so that the high, would be the bluebirds, and then there would be.
All know.
I know that was going to be my point, that everybody knew that the starlings were the bottom of the heap, whereas, it was nice words, but everybody knew, without being specific, and again, it was almost painful, and I'm thinking about this with children now, that they're stigmatized from the very beginning, and they don't even, before they even begin, they're back before the starting line, and it's so difficult for them to.
Well, if we would just accept the fact that people
are different,
start out, not only are they very different within themselves, have a lot of high and low points, but they're different from each other, and if we just accepted that difference, not everybody, you don't want a world where everybody is the same.
Exactly.
We are not widgets, and we're not robots, and so on. And so we would have time, we have them for 12 years. And I went to free public preschool in Paris in 1933 when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
That's how far behind we are. And I keep saying, if we could get the kids started properly, if we could give them a chance. And in those days, there was still a lot of mothers at home, so they had at least some parent at home. But nowadays, the kids have the television set to babysit or an older sibling.
Right.
And I have to give John Monfredo and his wife a lot of credit because they try to get as many books into the hands of children as soon as they can. Because I think once you have a book and it's a treasure, and a lot of kids have a treasured book and a story, read that to me over and over again, and some of them even learn to read by following, and what's that?
Right.
So there's a lot that can be done. It doesn't have to be formal education, and God help us if we start phonics in the kindergarten, first grade, sounding out words when that is not what's going to help you in English. So anyway, to segue over from there, the reason I was concerned about, disabilities is as people grow up or people come here with it in the various, areas of difficulty. It doesn't have to be a lifetime disability. It's just an area where you might have to work a little harder. Now, some disabilities obviously are not going to be able to be remedied no matter what. If you go to war and you have a leg blown off, you're not going to walk with two legs, although they do marvelous things now.
Right.
I see people, pretty soon it's going to be the marathon, and in the marathons, there are people running with one artificial leg, two with prosthetics. They're working on arms that have fingers that work now. I mean, if you just live long enough nowadays, maybe they'll find a place. Who knows? Maybe eventually they'll be able to replace eyeballs too, or nerves. Depends on where the damage is, But the thing is, if we put money and good people into basic research, not always applied. Applied, that's okay. That's after you have gotten the answers and then you can develop the stuff for it. Basic research is, where you really ask the pertinent questions. And we don't always ask the right questions.
Right. Well, I think we want there to be a measurable outcome. We want to be able to show. See, we started here.
That's basic. That's not basic research. Right. That's applied. That's what the businesses want. That's what the corporate world wants.
Exactly.
That's what, if there isn't a profit at the end, forget it.
Yeah, we don't want it.
Yeah. But there are a number of people and a number of the young people who are, really idealistic about this, who want to find a solution to some things. But you've got to ask the right questions. If you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answer. And we don't ask a lot of questions.
I'm also thinking that when you mentioned robots, I think so much of education now is dangling and you can become a this. All you have to do is do this and this and this. So it's like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
So it's like but you may not have the foundation for any of this.
Well, it takes a whole lot to be very good at whatever you pick. And there's so many choices nowadays. But before you even get to that, we need to know really, what are you bringing? And we don't ask that. If we even just had a really, really good physical diagnosis. I mean, I worked in a treatment center in Cleveland, and we had presumed that this particular girl that had my cottage that she had psychological problems, because every so often she would just fade away and, nothing happening, and then she would come back and but not particularly knowing where she was all that last time. Well, when we finally insisted that first you're going to do a really good physical workup on this child and stop assuming that it's psychological, that she limps because her father has a limp. Well, we discovered that she had a foreshortened Achilles heel. Her limp was physical, so that could be fixed. And we discovered also that she was having petit mal seizures, and that's where she didn't know what it was. We didn't know what it was. And a good thorough diagnosis, that would be the IEP, the good diagnosis would let us know that when she was gone there, she was having petit mal seizures. And those things can be worked with. And if they can't, then you know, and you know what's happening, and you don't label her as a mental case.
Right. But it also seems to me that people were looking to label her in the sense of these are the characteristics that would say that, that she's...
Yeah, we'll go with symptoms. I mean, you go to your doctor. I don't know how many times I've been misdiagnosed because in 15 minutes they ask you, well, what are your symptoms? And then they go through their compendium of, I don't know, the manual or whoever, their compendium of symptoms, and they say, let's try this for 2 weeks. And if it doesn't work, come back and try something else. I mean, it's beguess and begosh.
Yes.
That's not how you save money and do things that actually cure people. Sometimes they accidentally get it right. But a lot of the major diseases, a lot of the major difficulties have very similar symptoms. And besides that, you're in your own body and you know what you're feeling.
Right.
But a lot of us grew up in the day when you don't complain to your doctor. You don't say anything. The doctor asks you, how are you? You say, I'm fine. and that's of no help at all.
Right. Like, you figure it out.
Yeah. Well, in the old days, when you had a primary care doctor who came to your house, probably had delivered you, knew your family, knew everything. When he opened the door, first time he looked at you, could probably make a pretty intelligent diagnosis. Because he had this whole treasure trove of information about you, your family, probably had eaten a meal with you, so knew your diet, so he couldn't tell you any stories.
Yep.
Yeah, so we don't have that kind of information anymore, and the machines don't give it to you. I mean, go to the emergency room, and I have sat there with an elderly patient under real stress and having to, bang on people's desks there with all that machinery because she did not want to she couldn't go to the bathroom. I mean, there are certain basic things that are stressors for the individual. Right. Why not allow the family to bring in the kind of food they're used to so at least their system isn't stressed that way? Right. If we for 8 hours couldn't even get something to eat for her in the emergency room because the cafeteria was closed.
Right. And I remember in 2013 I ruptured a disc in my back, and they were going to do a discotomy, and the surgeon kept getting interrupted, so to speak, with other emergencies. So I went for days without eating anything because they didn't want to feed me. And then when it became evident that I wasn't going down for surgery, I asked, and they're, the cafeteria is closed. I'm like, well, can you get me some food? I mean, it was almost like, again, like a robot that...
They don't consider you as a whole functioning system that has learned to do with whatever problems are and survive, because after all, you got in there and you're alive, and you're kicking oftentimes. But the last person whose comfort is really attended to is the patient. Right. There's all these machines and all this buzzing and bleeping and lights and people running around. I mean, that's not conducive to getting well.
Right, exactly. You're also, because this is a big theme of mine, the people skills. The people, and I've worked with medical students, and they're very shy about, because they feel that they're going to be exposed as, like, I don't know this, but how are you going to derive information from someone unless you converse with someone? So. What I hear you saying in our discussion is all of this technology and all of these machines and robotics, they're great, but human beings need to communicate with one another, and and that's a learned skill. So
because when you're born, the whole world revolves around you.
Right.
And at 3 years of age, you begin to realize that the world does not, and some people don't ever get over that stage.
Exactly.
They elected a president who is at the 3-year stage because, if you cater to that, and they've never had to confront any of the challenges of the regular world. And, none of us is born absolutely perfect.
Right.
So let's say we all potentially have some kind of weakness, something that needs to be worked on.
Right.
Yeah. And you have to work on it.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know how are we going to conclude this program other than it's been a delight to...
Other than look at the individual, for God's sakes. The individual human is the place to look first. Not a bunch of machines, not a bunch of symptoms, but the individual human. Give more time to them, listen to them, and make them feel that what they're feeling is actually valid, and ask them where they want to go and what they want to be.
So I would say it's that word, it's ask. It's listen and learn. So I call that the all principle, ask, listen, learn. And thank you for allowing me to listen.
There's a lot more. I'll have to have you over on Senior Speak, and we can
continue this. Okay.
Yeah, because there's a lot the city can do to make life more pleasant for people who have obvious physical disabilities. But a lot of us have disabilities that don't show.
Exactly. Hidden. Thank you so much, Edith, for
having me.
For gracing
We'll do it again.
Okay, we'll do it again. Thank you. Join me again for another edition of Connecting the Dots.
Please note that the information provided in this show is not a substitute for consulting with an experienced local attorney and receiving counsel based on the facts and circumstances of a particular transaction. To contact Lizbeth, email her at lisbeth@elizabethlmyska.com or call her office at 508-753-7681. We're online at connectingthedots.lawyer. Executive producers, Lizbeth Myska and Jack Peacock. Producers, John Medberry and Bill Hamilton. A production of Elizabeth L. Myska, J.D., LLM, in association with Compliments.
So you've got a song about where to call for government information?
Check this out. We got the benefits and services that'll make you smile to get the answers you need. Put us on speed dial.
That is gold, Your Honor.
1-800-FIT-INFO.